we are pushing for no WestConnex, which is a big item on our agenda. And although the council are making all the right noises towards saying, we're going to stop this, we're going to help you, we're going to do this, we haven't seen any progress whatsoever.
I guess you're aware of the fact that we recently had the 6-month period of time that we have now been under administration. And that is the Baird appointed administrator, so that we now have a direct link between the state and developers, cutting out the middleman, middle person, which is us, cutting out council, cutting out the community, directly from the state to the developers. And now we're seeing what's happening in terms of WestConnex as well. I guess we've also seen this, you've also noticed the really significant escalation in the work in WestConnex. That's no coincidence that has coincided with the forced amalgamation of our council, because we know how hard our 3 councils fought to stop WestConnex, and we know how important it was to the Baird government to get rid of those councils, to sack us, because we were loud and proud and we were standing up for our community. Well, guess what? We're still loud and proud and standing up for our community, and our community is with us.
And we won't give up.
Absolutely, we will not give up. We know that WestConnex is a sham. We know that it is not just badly planned, it is not being planned at all. We know that they're throwing money at it in wild abandon, in an obscene way. And in fact, the most recent, which I think you may have also read, is that they're now throwing money at West Tigers. How can a project which is financed from public funds be sponsoring West Tigers? I mean, ask the question about that. But that is what we're seeing. We're seeing mountains and mountains of money going into their communication strategy. And why? Because of us. Because we're not going to give up. We're not going to give up for one very simple reason. Because we're right. Because we're right, everybody. We know we're right. We know that this WestConnex project has to be stopped. We know that what urban growth is proposing is entirely wrong. And we know that our communities deserve to have local democracy, local representation. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. And let's keep the fight up, stop WestConnex, and bring back our local councils. Yes. And I'm now going to pass over to the Hall Green Lad.
Thank you, Rochelle. I think you've said it all, but I'll say it again just in case. It is terrific that people are still coming to these council meetings, because it keeps the flame of real local democracy alive. This Baird government is trying to bulldoze not only councils but whole communities, and especially those in the inner west. If it's not WestConnex, it is the Parramatta Road redevelopment. If it's not the Parramatta Road redevelopment strategy, it's high-rise. Within 500 metres of where I'm living, there are something like 2,500 to 3,000 dwellings, high-rise dwellings on the agenda. And they have been put through without any community consultation, without any real listening, without any real participation. Okay, all right, just ignore it, just keep on going. Thank you. I mean, this kind of petty harassment, of course, is indicative of the state of free speech, the state of real community participation, the state of real participatory democracy in our community. It is being hedged about, it is being undermined, it is being destroyed at every point, whether it's environmental protections or whether it's real local representation, whether it's stopping mega projects that like WestConnex, or giving people a decent say in what happens in their community. It is being hedged about, undermined and blocked by this government.
But on the agenda tonight is an item 20, which sets out the meeting venue for all of next year. And guess what? They're all going to be here. Do you remember being consulted about that? So I will have something to say about that at item 20, so stick around. And then I will be raising the fact that security guards are allowed to tell us to move away because they don't want us to speak at all. The The third thing I want to say, on behalf of a group called Leichhardt Against WestConnex Law, have asked me to tell you that they have been holding protests at drill sites, particularly those of you who already know this at Pioneers Park. Does everyone know Pioneers Park in Norton Street, Leichhardt?
We also had stage 3 environmental impact assessment on the agenda, and that affects the Leichhardt Roselle part of our local government area. That will be, at this stage, going through a planning approval and assessment process in the first half of 2017. Council needs to get on the front foot in terms of getting together a team of consultants who can scrutinise the documentation that will be put out, some in January through to March, some in May through to June, July, in order to scrutinise what is being put forward by Sydney Motorway Corporation, in order to make an informed submission from Council on behalf of its communities.
I do welcome this minute. I think it is really important that we undertake these traffic studies. They will have to be quite extensive. For example, we'll have to include the roundabout at Summerhill and Dalhousie Street on the other side, Hawthorn Parade, right up to Frederick Street and very much west, because those areas will, in Davis Street, feed into Parramatta Road, and people will use them as rat runs to get into the tunnel. The only thing I disagree with is that the council is paying for it. I understand that it's pragmatic, and I think it's good that we're doing that because we need to protect our residents from the impacts of this stupid project. I will always remain opposed to it, and I think the council should.
The amalgamation is to save residents money. And all we've done is throw money out at a handful of people that want to agitate, that probably have 3 cars at their home, that are screaming for public transport.
As one of the residents, I actually object to the former councillor's indication that there are a lot of people who have 2 to 3, 4 cars. My household certainly does not have that. We rely heavily on public transport, and WestConnex will not solve the problems of this suburb. Secondly, I would like to ask, where is the noise assessments? We are living with a nightmare of a project. We get aircraft noise from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I have not seen a noise study done. Any other person is subject to state government rules around noise, in that you have requirements that council is due to enforce along with police noise. Why is WestConnex flouting those rules? I want to know why they are not being held accountable to the same noise requirements that every single other resident in this suburb is. My sleep is disturbed. I cannot get a good night's sleep. I'm lucky if on a good day I get 3 hours because WestConnex finishes at 3 a.m. I have to get up at 6:30 a.m. This is a work health safety issue that the government is ignoring. I hold an important job. I have to catch public transport and drive. My health is affected by this development and the noise, and I see nothing done by council. I would like to know why.
I'm very pleased, and I congratulate your administrator on taking up this issue. This was a principal issue in the submission we made very early in the piece of WestConnex, that something should be done to address the rat running that is going to occur as a result of the WestConnex. I'm glad to see that you've taken it up, and I hope to goodness that there is some relief for our residents in residential streets.
The request that was put to him to amend his administrator minute and to include the additional funds that would be required in order to properly assess the detailed plans when they come out in mid-January for the M5, M4 link, because it's critical that we are proactive in that, and the community very strongly relies on council, in fact previously relied on the 3 councils, to do that detailed work and to do the analysis and to pay the consultants, which unfortunately do cost a lot of money. And just to answer your question, Julie, unfortunately the council staff are fantastic, but the level of expertise that you often need to do that detailed analysis when it comes to traffic modelling and air pollution, you simply have to go out of council in order to be able to find that, and unfortunately it's very expensive. in point 2, you talk about the study to recommend appropriate traffic management measures to respond to the impacts predicted to occur, and council to use this to lobby state government to fund the implementation of required measures which are to be put in place. I would argue that, in fact, being that the position of the 3 councils is to oppose WestConnex, that should, by rights, read that the information that is provided is actually used, number 1, to oppose WestConnex, and then number 2, also to address the issues that are there. So I would ask that you amend that. I would also ask, in the initial proposed minute, we also requested that there be at least 1 public meeting. The reason for the public meeting is because residents also want to be able to put in a submission when these detailed plans come out.
The other issue that is of importance to the people at this end, the removal of the portals in Camperdown, mean that there's going to be a greater exodus of people or cars at the 2 portals here in Haberfield, and that is just going to make it a seriously bad problem. We've already got bottlenecks at Parramatta Road and Battle Bridge and City West Link, and these streets just cannot take any more traffic. So where it is going to go is the local streets, and we need to know and be able to address it.
It seems to me to be amazing that we're not addressing the holistic issue, and no one is really looking at the alternatives. The alternatives obviously is public transport, a train network which carries a lot of people, and that would result in less cars. Now, people are missing the point. We've got to stop WestConnex. It's very simple. And I'm wondering what are the people in front of me doing to stop WestConnex? It is obviously illogical. The infrastructure New South Wales 2012 state strategy, when you look at their information, they only looked at a road. They did not look at any railway lines. Funny that. And they say a broader set of options for addressing Sydney's longer-term transport needs is needed. There was no robust study. All they did was look at one road option. What about all the other rail options?
Michelle Price, in relation to noise issues, I do understand it's a very significant issue for residents, particularly in the Ashfield-Haberfield area at the moment. We have, through lobbying, managed to get a Department of Planning Compliance Officer based in Council, Rob Sherry, and I know he is doing his best to manage the impacts of construction noise, dust, vibration and other issues that are occurring. Relation to points made by Rochelle Porteous, we are making a couple of adjustments to the recommendations, which I'll put up shortly. I wrote to the Premier today regarding your 15 questions and seeking a response ASAP.
The attitude that the Administrator expressed in introducing this item would seem to me to be something that is not encapsulating the spirit that inner city councils have taken towards state government planning projects in the past. We don't, it seems to me, accept necessarily things handed on down high by state governments. I mean, if we had taken that attitude back in the 1970s, we would have had above ground rated expressways going through the suburbs of Glebe and Annandale and Rozelle and so on. We did not accept that kind of arbitrary decision making by the state government. The same goes with the sale of Cullen Park. That was announced as a fait accompli as well. We refused to accept it, and in those kind of instances we have been successful. So it seems to me what is the great error in this report is the acceptance of the Parramatta Road strategy. And if that is accepted by this council, it is fatal for the Taverners Hill precinct in general, and it is fatal for 67 to 73 Lords Road in particular, because the whole case for 67 to 73 Lords Road rests on the fact that it is green lighted by the Parramatta Road Urban Transformation Strategy. And it seems to me that what has to be added to this resolution, extremely important, is that the urban growth, the Minister and the Department of Planning have to be told that Council reserves its right to challenge and amend and not accept certain parts of that strategy. Because that strategy, as far as the Taverners Hill precinct is concerned, while it has in fact downscaled the demands on that area as far as additional housing is concerned, it still leaves 67 to 73 Lords Road, and it introduces 6 to 4 stories along Davey Street, along Foster Street, and along parts of Lords Road and Kegworth Street.
I'm in the Taverners Hill area, and like Paul and a lot of others, I'm worried about the community and what's going to happen, as well as the impact to myself. But in the urban growth report, there's a lot of cons, more cons than there are pros for the Taverners Hill area, and I believe all those cons should be addressed before anything is happening. Also, when Robert Stokes announced the urban growth final report on the day that Donald Trump got elected, he said it was done with the understanding that 50,000 cars are going to be removed from Parramatta Road, which virtually everybody knows is not going to happen. And it's also not going to happen between Haberfield and Camperdown, since the on and off ramps have been removed from Camperdown now, and it's already been acknowledged that there will be an increase in traffic, because that will be the only way to get between Haberfield and the city, because there'll be no other on or off ramp. So the urban growth doesn't address anything for the community. There was an alternate plan put out by Marrickville and Leichhardt councils. It's been totally ignored by urban growth. It actually catered for the same, virtually the same number of houses or apartments or whatever, more green space, but left it along Parramatta Road, which is what the whole thing is about, Parramatta Road renewal, not taking over Lewisham and West Leichhardt and extending it way beyond, and it doesn't put in any green, no childcare, no aged care, no traffic considerations, nothing. It's just destroying communities.
Given that there's going to be a lot of growth in development and housing and so forth along Parramatta Road, I believe there should be some decent transport. What has been proposed is more buses, bus lanes, light rail. Absolutely madness, this is. You have cities around the world that are building or continuing their metro networks. For example, London, Crossrail, from one end of London through the middle and out to the other. This is what we need to do in Sydney. It is quite pathetic to be building, well, number one, the road for more cars, and also light rail seems to be a popular thing at the moment.
Just one point that jumped out at me in the following report, item 6, but it relates to the Parramatta Road Urban Strategy, and that was, it notes that recent rezonings, Parramatta Road Urban Transformation Strategy and the WestConnex will result in the loss of 85.3% of Leichhardt LP's industrial land supply, which struck me as quite extraordinary. So I've got a very serious matter.
Council is not adopting the recommendations in the Parramatta Road strategy in relation to Lords Road. So there is, in this business paper, evidence that Council is not just necessarily slavishly following the recommended height and density and land use controls in the strategy. We are obviously being mindful to our local circumstances, and that's what's happening with Lords Road. So don't assume that Council is slavishly following the strategy, because we're not. A proper public transport solution, and the gentleman didn't speak that complimentarily about light rail, but the council is of the view that rapid bus transit system is not appropriate. We have commissioned additional work on that. There will be a report that council will be releasing soon, and we are very much advocating for a better public transport solution than buses, which is what's currently recommended in the strategies.
So I've lived for 35 years in the area. On the weekend we held a meeting of South Haberfield residents to discuss the proposed development and are very strongly opposing it. As far as we can see, it gives a huge private benefit at quite a significant community cost. The industrial area provides a variety of services for the local community, not just employment services, but also it has gyms and art schools and facilities we need. In Haberfield, we have very little areas, chance of going to other places for these services, and it's a vital piece of land. So I want to congratulate Council for its stand so far, and to inform Council that we formed the South Haberfield Action Group, SHAG, to...
The area from Hatham Street to Marion Street, along Foster Street and Tibbetts Streets, is currently comprised of low-density housing, residential dwellings and Kegworth School. They're all white streets on the western side which end in a dead end towards the railway embankment. The traffic impact assessment only looks at the impact on the nearby intersections and makes no attempt to evaluate the impact of increased traffic which will have on those living in or visiting the area. In the time I've been living in Davey Street, I'm aware of numerous accidents and at least 2 fatalities on the corner of Lords Road and Foster Street. This has necessitated the no right-hand turn sign and the erection of the overhead bridge at Tibbetts Street for school kids and the community. The traffic assessment makes no mention of the impact on residents of traffic in Davies Lane. The houses on the western side of Davies Street back onto the lane and currently provide relay access for parking for those homes. Nor does it discuss the impact on Kegworth Street from the fact that it will be the preferred route for cars and trucks entering into that new intersection. The addition of 315 extra dwellings and a childcare centre means that many more cars will be using Kegworth and Davies Streets, entering and exiting at Foster and Tibbetts Street, and there's a greatly increased risk for kids and residents. There's no consideration of the impact it will have on children coming and going to school through the Hawthorne Canal Tunnel from Haberfield and crossing at Lords Road. And there have been many near misses in that area which have been of concern. The estimate that the additional traffic at peak hours will only result in 1 or 2 second delay at Foster Street and Kegworth Street intersections is ludicrous. The increase in traffic will have a significant impact on travel times around the area.
I'm the director of Arno Start School, which is one of the tenants in the property at Lords Road. I also want to thank the council for doing all they can to oppose this development, and hope to continue to do so. One of the issues that I note in the rezoning documentation is that they refer to only 60 workers on site that would be impacted by the demolition of the site as it is now. In reality, it's closer to 10 times that number of people that work on site, closer to 200 people. And that doesn't even account for the people that interact with the site on a regular basis, which is closer to 1,000 people a week if you include art classes, gym visits, and the other businesses that have their activity there. And I'd like to request Council to include up-to-date tenant statistics in their report and submission in opposition to the rezoning.
So it is very, very heartening to see the Council take up the strong position of opposition and for balanced development and for proper planning as far as this is concerned. And the report is absolutely excellent. And it is absolutely, I think, historic and unique. And I think this needs to be recorded, and people need to understand this. It is very, very rare in my experience for the community, elected councillors and the council planners to be at one on a particular development application. In my long history of dealing with planning matters in Leichhardt municipality, I can tell you it is very rare. Usually there are people on the planning staff who in some way or other can see value in the planning proposal that's being put forward by developers. In this case, it is not the case. They are as strongly opposed in their report as the community and the formerly elected councillors could wish them to be. And we know that the next step is it goes before the planning panel. And I don't think any of us are under any illusions as to how difficult that's going to be. That is the planning panel that green-lighted the gateway, green-lighted the advertisement of this rezoning proposal. We know there's a 3-2 government majority on it. We know that it has been guided by the Parramatta Road Urban Renewal or Transformation Strategy. We know that is very different. We know that behind them there is a state government that is driven to put more and more development, more and more apartments, more and more high-rise into the inner city. We know that that's difficult. So it brings me to the point that I would like you to consider, Mr. Administrator, and that's what our next step should be. We will put in our objections. We will go before that panel hearing. We will do the process. We will obey the rules. But I think we've got to go further than that. A debate has already begun, it seems to me, in Sydney, in the media, in the department itself, and in political parties about how much of this high-rise, development we want in the inner city, what it means for the kind of lives that our citizens are going to lead now and in the near future, what kind of balances, what kind of employment lands, what kind of infrastructure is needed and so on. There's a real debate, and I think we should inject this particular case, this particular application into that debate and start also to say to the government, you've got to join that debate and you've got to give us answers about what kind of development, what kind of planning regime you're thinking about. So I'd like to propose that this council, very similar to what Leichhardt Council's done in the past, is to call in the new year a public meeting to discuss this particular proposal, the amount of development that is going on, the Parramatta Road Urban Renewal Strategy and the government's planning regime. And that we should invite the Minister or the Minister's representative to that meeting, and we should invite the Shadow Minister at the state level as well. And that we should have a real debate and a real discussion, not just about this particular development, but the whole runaway high-rise development that seems to be confronting us in the inner city at present, so that we can get some rationality and community benefit back into this debate.
What we need to consider is this is just development is really based on greed and not really anything else. It's not contributing to the community, it's taking away from the community. And it's going to have a huge impact on the community. The affordable housing that they put in there, it's tokenistic. A few studio apartments and 1 bedroom. So that means that affordable housing, you can't be a family.
The idea of acquisition is not overly simplistic. It's not a given, because under the legislation that applies to council, the approval of the minister is required to compulsory acquire land. In my experience, ministerial approval is not given lightly. The difficulty in this case would be in securing approval for an acquisition if there's no actual definition of what the open space requirements are, and if the acquisition is inconsistent with the planning regime that applies to the parcel of land, then it's highly unlikely to get that approval. So I'd be recommending that if council continues to oppose the proposal, which clearly it does, it should nonetheless engage with the planning process and establish its requirements around open space if the proposal is to go ahead.